I was thinking about this the other day. When you go to a play, maybe it's just a high school production or even some massive Broadway show, there is this kind of unspoken agreement between the audience and the set designers.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. Like we all collectively agree that the painted cardboard trees in the background or that flimsy fake wooden door, they don't actually matter.
They're just props.
Exactly. They are just a disposable stage, a temporary backdrop for the real action, which is, the drama of the actors on the stage. And I think if we look really closely at how modern society operates, a huge number of people navigate their entire lives viewing the physical world exactly like that cardboard tree.
Wow, yeah. That is a really compelling way to frame human psychology right there.
We just treat the coffee in our mug, the ground beneath our feet, even our own physical bodies, as just this temporary disposable stage set for the quote-unquote real spiritual or intellectual drama playing out behind the scenes.
I mean, it captures a default mindset that has been around for centuries. There is this ancient lingering assumption in human thought that the physical stuff is the cheap seats and the immaterial, spiritual, or mental stuff is the VIP section.
Oh, the VIP section.
Yeah, we inherently separate the material from the immaterial and then we rank them. And we almost always put the physical world at the absolute bottom.
And that's exactly why today's deep dive is so fascinating, because we are looking at a framework presented in a document and an accompanying infographic, both of which are titled The Goodness of Creation by Chris R. Velazquez.
Yes.
And his core mission in these materials is to just completely dismantle that cardboard stage theory. The premise he presents is that the physical world is not an accident. It is not a prison for the mind or the soul.
Or a divine mistake.
Exactly, not a mistake. And it is certainly not a disposable backdrop. Within this theological framework, the material world is the deliberate, intentional handiwork of a living creator.
Which, if you think about it, changes the entire lens through which a person views reality. I mean, the author makes the argument right in the introduction that if this foundational concept of creation is misunderstood, everything built on top of it becomes distorted.
Everything.
Yeah, ethics, the way we view our daily work, how we process human suffering, and even our expectations for the future. All of it gets warped if you get the opening premise wrong. So as we go through this, think about how you view the physical stuff in your own life. We really have to examine how this text views the physical realities we interact with every day.
Okay, let's unpack this. The materials describe the doctrine of creation not just as a historical prologue to a religious text, but as the opening note of a grand symphony. I love that phrasing.
Think beautiful.
So if this is the opening note of the symphony, what exactly is it declaring? Let's start at the very beginning, literally Genesis 1.1.
Right. So looking at the biblical foundations outlined in the work, the first analytical step is observing what Genesis 1.1 actually doesn't do.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
Well, the text reads, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." From an ancient literature perspective, what really stands out is that it makes absolutely no attempt to prove the existence of a deity. It just assumes it.
Oh, right. There's no philosophical preamble.
Exactly. There is no argument setting up a first cause. It drops the reader directly into a free, sovereign, and purposeful act. The implication being that the universe is not self-originating. Matter didn't just bump into existence through blind chance.
And the framework emphasizes that this wasn't an act of desperation either, because, a lot of ancient creation myths feature gods creating humans out of loneliness, or because they need slave labor to harvest food.
Right, the gods are needy.
Exactly. But the text here points out that before creation, this God is presented as eternal and completely self-sufficient. So the act of creation is described as an overflow of free generosity. Yeah. A gift. The source actually cites Psalm 33, highlighting that the heavens were made by the word of the Lord. The universe is spoken into being. And because it's spoken into being by a specific source, it inherently belongs to that source.
Which is where Psalm 24 is brought in to establish the baseline. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it.
Okay, but this concept of being spoken into existence, it introduces a distinct rhythm to the Genesis account, doesn't it?
It really does. And the infographic maps this out perfectly by categorizing the elements of creation. So light, land, plants, stars, animals, into this highly structured sequence of divine evaluation.
Like a pattern.
Yeah, the rhythm goes God speaks, God sees, and God declares. And the consistent declaration after each physical manifestation is, it was good, the light is good, the physical dirt is good, the biological organisms are good.
Right.
And then, when humanity is introduced, the text notes the language shifts to an ultimate verdict, behold, it was very good.
I want to pause on the mechanism of this spoken creation, though, because I'm struggling with how to conceptualize that without it sounding um, incredibly fragile.
Fragile in what way?
Well, imagine an artist painting a masterpiece. The painting isn't the artist, but it belongs to them and reflects them. But here's my question. If creation is just spoken into existence like a sound wave, doesn't that make the physical world ephemeral?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Right, because a sound wave naturally dissipates. It fades into silence. If the material world is just a word, it feels detached. It feels like it could just vanish.
It's a really intuitive jump to make, equating a spoken word with a fading echo, but the framework corrects that specifically.
Hmm?
Think of it less like a sound wave echoing in a canyon and more like computer code running a highly complex program.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Right, because the code is language. It's written or spoken logic. And that code doesn't just initiate the program and walk away. The active processing of that code sustains the digital reality every single millisecond. If the code stops running, the program ceases to exist.
So the speech isn't just an inciting incident. It's the continuous sustaining force.
Precisely how the text outlines it. The document points out that creation is sustained by this speech and ordered by divine wisdom. It is entirely contingent and dependent at all times.
And the infographic visualizes this, right?
Yes, with a pillar icon. It represents the foundational truth that the universe is held together by this active word. It removes the idea of fragility entirely. The physical world has immense density and weight in this view. As the author states, matter matters because God made it.
That is a dense philosophical concept to carry around. Matter matters because God made it. It means the physical reality you bump into every day has intrinsic value just by virtue of its origin.
Exactly.
It isn't just raw material waiting for us to assign it where it already has it.
And that intrinsic value is deeply theological. When the text says creation is good, it's not a superficial aesthetic judgment. It's not just noticing a pretty sunset. It's a verdict on the nature of reality. The author brings in Psalm 19, which claims the physical heavens are actively declaring the glory of God. Creation functions as a theater of divine wisdom.
Which, okay, that brings up a massive historical tension. So if the physical world has this incredible intrinsic value, and it's constantly declaring this divine glory, how do we keep from crossing the line into worshiping the creation itself? Where is the boundary?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because human history is full of societies worshiping the sun, the oceans, the harvest.
Right. And this is exactly where the author introduces the concept of borrowed goodness. This serves as the theological boundary line you're asking about. The text clarifies that creation is undeniably good, but it does not possess independent goodness.
So it's not good all on its own.
Exactly. Its goodness is entirely derivative. It flows from a good creator. The document references James 1.17, which describes God as the Father of lights, from whom every good and perfect gift originates.
Well, a gift implies a giver. And if it's an overflow of generosity, the world is the gift, not the source.
That distinction right there is the firewall against nature worship.
Right.
The author insists that creation is good, but it is not ultimate. In the infographic, there are icons of a mountain and a sun. The visual argument is super clear. These physical structures are magnificent. They are good, but they are not deities.
They are signs pointing back to the Creator.
Yes, they are a medium, not the destination.
The text actually leans on Romans 1 to flesh this out, pointing to the historical human tendency to exchange the truth for a lie. People take the created thing and elevate it to the status of the ultimate thing, effectively worshiping the signpost instead of the place the sign points to.
And we can observe the psychological mechanisms of this in modern life quite easily, honestly. Because most people today aren't bowing down to literal statues of the sun, right? But the human impulse to take a created, fundamentally good thing and turn it into an ultimate thing that is everywhere.
It happens constantly. Think about careers, romantic relationships, political ideologies, or even health and wellness.
Oh, wellness is a huge one.
Right. We take something that has legitimate created goodness, like the desire to be productive or to experience human connection or be healthy, and we load all of our expectations for identity, salvation, and ultimate meaning onto it.
And the inevitable psychological result is collapse. Because according to this theological framework, a created thing was simply never engineered to bear the weight of ultimate worship.
It just buckles under the pressure.
Exactly. If a person makes their career their god and they experience a layoff, they haven't just lost a paycheck. Their entire ontological foundation crumbles. The created thing fails when forced into the role of the ultimate thing.
So what does this all mean for us? This raises a question about what good actually means in this context. If goodness isn't about being the ultimate source of meaning, how does the text define it?
Well, the source material offers a really interesting synthesis here. It argues that biblically, good doesn't just mean pleasant or aesthetically pleasing, it means fitting, ordered, and aligned with its intended purpose.
It's closely tied to the ancient philosophical concept of telos, right?
Yes, telos, the inherent purpose or end goal of a thing. Goodness and purpose are basically inseparable in this text. The author notes that the world is declared good in Genesis because it works exactly as intended.
Everything has its place.
Right. The darkness is bounded by the light, the waters are separated, the ecological systems multiply. There is a deeply moral texture to reality here. There is a way things ought to be, determined by the intention of the creator. So, ontological goodness, the goodness of existing, is intimately linked to functional goodness.
Okay, so if goodness is tied to purpose and function, we have to look at the peak of that functional design in Genesis 1, which is the creation of humanity. What exactly were we put here to do? Because the document refers to humans as image bearers.
Right. The materials point to Genesis 1.26 through 28, where humanity is placed within the physical creation, but specifically distinguished from the rest of the animal kingdom. The function outlined is for humans, made in the image of the creator, to exercise dominion.
Okay, stop right there.
Oh boy, I know where you're going.
I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of the listener because the word dominion has a lot of baggage. Hasn't that concept been used historically to justify environmental destruction or just acting like tyrants over the earth?
Yeah.
People hear dominion and they think domination.
They assume it means treating the planet like an endless warehouse of disposable resources.
Exactly. How does the author reconcile that historical baggage?
He addresses that exact tension directly. He acknowledges that the concept has been massively distorted, but he insists that the biblical text places humanity above the animals, quote, but not as a tyrant. The framework defines true biblical dominion as acting as representatives under authority.
Oh, okay, so it's a delegated authority. You aren't the owner doing whatever you want. You're the manager executing the owner's vision.
Exactly. It establishes a moral and relational order. The infographic highlights this with the humanity as image bearer section, utilizing icons representing cultivation, community, and stewardship.
Because we are meant to mirror God's righteous rule, not exploit it.
Right. The logic presented is that if humans are meant to mirror God's rule, and God's rule is characterized by bringing order, life, and flourishing to reality, then human dominion must result in the flourishing of the earth.
Which totally shifts how this framework views human labor. Because the document makes a point of clarifying that work is not a curse. Farming, teaching, parenting, engineering. These are participations in God's ordering of the world.
It completely reframes the mundane reality of daily life. Under this theological umbrella, doing a Tuesday morning spreadsheet, or the physical exhaustion of caring for a toddler, or planting a community garden, they aren't just tedious necessities for survival, they are direct expressions of the original vocation of the image bearer.
And it extends beyond just labor. Human embodiment itself, marriage, the physical capability for fruitfulness, and even rest, they are all inherently good by design. The author links this rest specifically to the Sabbath command in Exodus, suggesting that this rhythm of work and rest isn't just a lifestyle suggestion. It's woven into the very fabric of physical reality.
It presents an incredibly cohesive, harmonious picture of reality, doesn't it? A physical world brimming with intention, goodness, purpose, and rhythmic rest, all pointing back to a generous creator.
It really does. But I want to pause our enthusiasm for a second, because we've painted this beautiful, perfectly ordered picture. But we both know that anyone listening is looking out their window right now, and the world is full of suffering, disease, decay, and brokenness. If it's all so good, what went wrong? How does this framework address the glaringly obvious brokenness of the human condition?
That is the essential pivot. The author approaches this by zooming out and mapping what he calls the grand narrative of Scripture. He traces the trajectory from eternity into creation, and then it crashes directly into the fall in Genesis 3.
The entrance of brokenness.
Right. The framework attributes the entrance of brokenness to human rebellion. But, and this is a critical, highly nuanced theological distinction in the text, he argues that sin does not make creation evil, in essence.
Wait, let's slow down and look at that, because this seems like the linchpin for everything else the document proposes. Sin breaks the world, but it doesn't make the physical world evil.
According to this theology, no, it doesn't. Sin introduces disorder. It introduces futility, frustration, biological death, and relational alienation. The narrative in Genesis 3 is used to explain why work becomes agonizing, why human relationships fracture, and why the physical environment becomes hostile.
Right.
But the foundational nature of the material world, its actual matter, doesn't suddenly undergo an ontological shift into evil.
Okay, let's go back to that computer code analogy from earlier. If the hardware of a supercomputer is brilliantly designed and perfectly manufactured, it's inherently good in its construction.
Right.
Then, if a malicious user downloads a devastating virus, the software becomes deeply corrupted. The system starts crashing, the cooling fans are screaming, programs freeze. The entire system is in a state of crisis. But the hardware itself, the silicon, the gold, the physical structure, didn't suddenly become an evil material.
Exactly.
It's an excellent creation that is currently suffering under a foreign corruption. The solution isn't to throw the computer in the trash.
That maps perfectly onto how the author uses Romans 8. The text says that creation groans. It groans under the weight of this corruption because it is wounded, not because it is inherently bad. The theological problem presented isn't that the universe is physical. The problem is that human rebellion has disordered the physical systems God originally ordered.
And the response to this virus is what drives the rest of the timeline in the sources.
What's fascinating here is how God responds. The creator doesn't look at the infected computer and throw it in the incinerator. The hardware is still valued. Instead, the narrative traces a long process of pursuing covenant faithfulness right in the middle of the brokenness.
Right. Through Noah, Abraham.
Exactly, the covenant, and then the introduction of law and wisdom, which function as mechanisms to bring temporary order and justice back into a fractured reality.
And ultimately, redemption.
Yeah.
And when you view redemption specifically through the lens of valuing the physical world, the mechanism of it is fascinating.
It is arguably the most radical claim in the entire framework. The text points to the Gospels, highlighting the doctrine of the Incarnation. It references John 1, stating that the Word, the very speech that coded the universe into existence, becomes flesh. Colossians 1 reinforces that all things were created through this Word and physically hold together in Him.
So the programmer enters the simulation, the creator puts on the hardware.
I love that. Yes, and in doing so offers the ultimate validation of the material world. Christ enters creation to redeem it, not to bypass matter, but by taking on physical flesh, experiencing bodily death, and undergoing a physical bodily resurrection.
It's so creational.
Completely. The Christian claim is not about a hologram or a spiritual projection. It is rooted in dirt, sweat, blood, and cellular respiration.
So Christ comes to reclaim the physical world. Where does that leave us right now in the present day, and where is this whole timeline heading?
Well, tracing the source material's timeline after the Messiah, the narrative enters the current era, the era of the church. The author describes this as living in the tension of the already and not yet.
All right, the kingdom is initiated but not fully consummated.
Exactly. And what he stresses heavily is how intensely material this current era of discipleship is intended to be.
Because it pushes back against the idea that spiritual growth is just about thinking elevated thoughts in a dark room somewhere.
Yeah, discipleship is highly material. It's eating physical bread, it's using actual water for baptism, singing with vocal cords, gathering in geographic locations. The material world isn't put on hold during this era, it is actively utilized.
And all of that is preparation for the culmination of the timeline.
Right. The text outlines judgment, which it frames not as the annihilation of the earth, but as the vindication of God's good order, the final eradication of the virus, then the millennium, demonstrating Christ's restorative reign.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The absolute peak of the timeline is the new creation. And this shatters so many popular cultural assumptions. So much of modern thought imagines eternity as this disembodied drift.
Clouds and harps.
Right. Floating on clouds, totally detached from anything solid. But the text dismantles that myth completely. The end of the Bible is actually more material than the beginning.
Yes. Pointing to Revelation 21 and 22, the promised eternity is not an escape pod away from creation, but a renewed heavens and a renewed earth. The vision is of a world where the corruption is permanently removed, but it remains undeniably a physical environment.
The millennium and new creation are about bringing earth under righteous rule.
Understanding this grand timeline is intellectually stimulating, but if we truly believe this, it has to completely rewire how we live our daily lives. We need to look at the practical implications.
Yes, the Tuesday morning theology. How does this massive narrative hit the pavement? The text outlines several major shifts in human behavior, starting with the idea that gratitude replaces entitlement.
Right. If the physical reality around you is a borrowed goodness, a gift from a creator, then life itself is a gift before it is anything else. The author cites 1 Timothy 4.4, emphasizing that everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it is received with thanksgiving.
So think about food. You don't just eat for fuel. A
Right.
well-cooked meal, a crisp piece of fruit, these are tactile expressions of the Creator's generosity. You receive it with thanksgiving. It strips away the modern entitlement of, I deserve this because I bought it.
And that posture seamlessly transitions into stewardship. Stewardship becomes worship. If the physical world is on loan, how we treat it becomes a serious moral issue. Topics like environmental conservation aren't just modern political agendas, they're ancient mandates rooted in Genesis. Caring for creation is showing respect to the one who designed it.
The text also draws out massive implications regarding human anatomy under the heading, The Body Matters.
Oh, this is huge.
If the whole narrative hinges on physical resurrection, then human bodies are not just temporary meat suits. This shapes sexual ethics, care for the sick, and the sanctity of life. Cruelty isn't just a social failure, it's an assault on created dignity.
It grounds abstract theology in gritty human justice. And it applies the same grounding to our daily vocations. Work has dignity. Colossians 3 says to work at whatever you do as if working directly for the Lord. There's no sacred secular divide. Whether you're formatting a spreadsheet or farming a field, faithful labor brings order to the world.
And the text argues that beauty is not optional either.
I love that section.
Art, music, craftsmanship, they aren't frivolous luxuries. They train the soul to recognize God's harmony. A Christian worldview shouldn't be ugly, careless, or joyless.
But we have to address the hard part here. The final practical implication is how this theology processes deep suffering. Because what about when life is devoid of beauty? How does a framework obsessed with the goodness of creation help a person sitting in a chemotherapy ward?
That's the hardest question.
The way the author navigates this provides immense psychological comfort. He argues that suffering is real, but it is not ultimate. Because creation is wounded by the virus of the fall, not ruined essentially, Christians can lament honestly without despairing, absolutely.
It provides a theological permission structure for grief.
Yes. The world groans, but it's moving toward liberation. You don't have to pretend the agony isn't real, but you are protected from believing the agony is the final word.
Living this out sounds beautiful, but the text points out that humans have historically fallen into some pretty severe mental traps trying to navigate this. Let's make sure we know what potholes to avoid.
The author outlines 5 common misunderstandings. The first trap is dualism. This loops back to your theater stage analogy. It's the toxic idea that the spiritual realm is pure and good, while the material realm is inherently dirty or bad. The document aggressively identifies this as a distortion.
Right. And the second trap is naturalism, the perspective that treats the universe as a closed system of purposeless matter. Science can explain the how, but naturalism abandons the why.
Exactly. The third trap is pantheism, or nature worship. This is the failure to maintain the creator-creation divide, believing the created order itself is the divine rather than a signpost pointing to the divine.
The fourth trap is one I really want to zoom in on. It's called pragmatism without reverence.
Wait, so reducing the world to pure utility, like treating land only as a profit margin or employees merely as productivity tools, the author is saying that is actually a theological violation.
Exactly, because it strips away the intrinsic value rooted in God's will.
Mhm.
When reverence is removed, creation is reduced to a vending machine, and human beings are reduced to biological tools. Pragmatism without reverence silences the physical world's glory by treating a divine masterpiece like cheap inventory.
Wow. And the final trap is the prosperity distortion. The false idea that a good creation guarantees a painless life. The virus of the fall is still active, so a faithful life may still include suffering.
If you look at all 5 traps, they all achieve the same devastating result. In the center of the infographic, it says, all of creation declares God is good. Falling into these traps silences that declaration. We have covered so much ground today. We've moved from the opening notes of Genesis to the physical reality of the new earth, seeing how our work, our bodies, and the world around us are imbued with borrowed goodness and divine purpose.
We really have. And my call to action for the listener today echoes the author's conclusion. Learn to live with open hands. Eat with gratitude. Work with purpose. Steward with care. Reject idolatry.
It's an incredible shift in perspective. But before we go, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought, something for you to mull over. The text tells us that the physical world is heading toward a glorious restoration, not the trash bin. So, consider the physical space you occupy right now, your room, your desk, your neighborhood. If the material world matters this much to the Creator, how might your specific physical actions in that tiny patch of geography today act as a miniature rehearsal for the new creation?
That is a brilliant way to look at it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep finding those aha moments in the physical reality right in front of you.